Hi everyone, welcome to Psychedelic Conversations. This is your hub for engaging in deep conversations around serotonergic hallucinogens that alter perceptions, affect cognitive processes, induce mystical and spiritual experiences. Enjoy the show. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Psychedelic Conversations podcast. I have a very special guest for you guys today from the UK, and I have Dr. Laurie Higbed with us today. Welcome. So great to have you.
Thank you for having me along, Susan. Great to be here.
Great. I just want to give a bit of a context and introduce you to our listeners. And just for a minute, and Dr. Laurie is registered with the Health and Care Professional Council and is a member of the Association of Clinical Psychologists. She is an experienced clinical psychologist, has worked as a lead therapist on clinical trials using MDMA and psilocybin-assisted psychotherapy, and has a special interest in working with complex trauma, addictions, and the use of psychedelic therapy to treat range of mental health difficulties. And she is currently a lead psychologist working with Awaken Life Sciences in the UK. And just quickly mention about the Awaken Life Sciences to you guys as well. It is a biotechnology company with clinical operations, researching, developing, and delivering psychedelic medicine to better treat addictions. Awaken's team consists of world-leading chemists, scientists, psychiatrists, and psychologists who are developing and advancing the next generation of psychedelic drugs, therapies, and enabling technologies to treat addiction. Wow, that's a real mission right there. So again, welcome to our conversation. And I'd like to find out a bit more about your background, Dr. Laurie, and how did you come into this space? That's always an interesting part.
Yeah, sure. Happy to share that story. So as you described at the beginning, I've been working in addiction services for a long time and thoroughly enjoyed that work and the clients that I was able to support and the hardworking staff in those services. But despite our best efforts, throwing everything we can at people, the kind of gold standard treatments that are out there at the moment, people still do struggle to recover from substance misuse problems. And I was seeing that a lot. On my caseload, I was supporting people who had a real struggle, often to engage in therapy in the first place. But certainly to kind of recover from their substance misuse problems and then stay recovered. And Dr. Ben Sessa, who has been working in the field of psychedelics for a long time, fortunately came to work in my service. And that was a real revelation, because we'd have these conversations over cups of coffee in the staff room about how our shared experiences of having clients who were quite stuck. And so I will try and cut quite a long story a little bit shorter, in that we basically collaborated and worked together to use psychedelics to support a new paradigm, a new way of supporting people to recover, in this instance, from alcohol addiction. And we created the MDMA for alcohol use disorder study. That was a collaboration between Bristol University and Imperial College London. And that was born out of this sense of, how can we help people to get well and stay well? And we thought that perhaps one of the ways was to help people really get to the root of their difficulties. Going back to what I was saying about, the best that we have to offer in kind of standard addiction services is kind of treating the symptom, so it's kind of help you to stop drinking, And we can do that really well, but staying stopped is tricky. And I think that's because, it's a coping mechanism for people who are kind of managing emotional distress, often from early childhood experiences. So just imagine if you can kind of get to the root of that difficulty, which MDMA-assisted psychotherapy is wonderful at doing. The hypothesis there is you've got a better chance of kind of then processing those problems that really create the alcohol use disorder in the first place. And then, people don't need to use alcohol as a coping strategy anymore because they've managed to process the real underlying problems. So that was how my journey through was kind of working in traditional addiction services, loving the work, loving the clients, and wanting to do something more.
Wow. That's so profound. I love Dr. Ben-Sasser's work, by the way. And one of his interviews, he talked about MDMA, or at least the psychedelics, being the holy grail when it comes to going into the root cause of the problem. So in your work, working with trauma, how important is it for us to understand trauma? How important is it for our individuals, like for us, just the ordinary people, to really be trauma informed? Because my background is in somatic therapy, and I work with body modalities, and it's now, of course, it's coming, to mainstream. Thank God, to a lot of psychologists and scientists in the field. But how important is it, do you think, to understand the trauma informed aspect working with psychedelics? Because it seems to be like cutting to the core and really going into the root. And if somebody's not ready, for example, like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question about readiness. And I think to answer that first part, I think it's crucial, not just with work with psychedelics, but our work as therapists generally, or just working with people who are struggling, have to have distress, whether or not that's a mental health problem or it's just experiencing distress. I think it's crucial that we're trauma informed and that we understand kind of potentially that trauma or adversity it can be underlying those difficulties, and we're sensitive to that. And I think the second part is, I think that you're alluding to, is that perhaps we don't always have to work directly with that trauma. So we can be trauma informed without actually working on the trauma itself. We can just be sensitive and understanding that there may be trauma and adversity there in a person's history, and we can then make the therapy more accessible to them, or just any collaborative work we're doing with that person, by being kind of sensitive to those experiences. But I think what is really fascinating about the psychedelic compounds is almost the readiness issue. That you would have as a kind of a standard therapist, if that's the right word, a therapist working not within in a psychedelic modality, then you would really be engaging in conversation about a person's readiness to engage in specific trauma processing work, wouldn't you? You'd be thinking about what they would need to do to prepare for that, and at what stage they were at. Perhaps, in my case, in my service, it was at stage they were at with their drinking and their drug use, to whether they could progress with full trauma processing work. What's amazing about psychedelics is that process can just unfold naturally, and it doesn't need to be led by the therapist. It's led by the individuals, what we call healing intelligence that they have inside them, and they don't kind of just surrender and relinquish control completely. I'm thinking about MDMA specifically here, which is obviously not a classic psychedelic, so they're still very orientated. It's still a very safe way to connect with your difficulties, perhaps your adverse experiences, perhaps your trauma, in a way that feels manageable and safe. And you can still choose to an extent how much you go towards that. And of course, as therapists, we will be kind of encouraging that person to go towards that as much as they feel able to. But I think it can be really hands off in the drug assisted session from the therapist point of view. We can just allow that process to happen between, for that person to use their own ability to self-heal. That's I think it's an incredible approach, and really a privilege to watch.
Yeah. So would you say that that's probably one of the biggest challenges, the difficulties of patient being led by the therapist instead of their own will and their willingness and openness that the medicine or the psychedelic creates?
I think that's a real kind of asset of a psychedelic assisted therapist, is that they can know when to take more of a back seat and be willing, to not know and not have all the answers, and to just kind of allow a process to unfold without knowing exactly what is going on for that person, and not needing to, and really trusting the process, as we call it, trusting that person's innate ability to heal themselves, trusting that the medicine is working with that. And on the other hand as well, knowing when you can kind of intervene a little and and offer more support. So that's a real that's a real skill of a psychedelic assisted therapist, allowing kind of the that experience to unfold naturally and not intervening too much, but just maintaining that supportive empathic presence. And what I also want to say to that, add to that is, and also it's okay if you don't always get it right. That we can be forgiving of ourselves, and our clients are forgiving of us if sometimes we are a little too heavy-handed, and our client might say, no, I'm good, I'm okay. And that's okay too, so that we will just learn as we go.
Yeah, that's such an invaluable insight from the therapist's perspective. Currently, I mean, it's very abstract. You said earlier about trusting the process. This is so abstract in the way that the environment and our social environment is designed. We haven't given tools to trust, or we haven't given these concepts to grasp. It's very new, isn't it? And then there comes the psychedelics, and they're like, okay, now we're learning a whole new concept of trusting the process. When you came into it first, what was that for you like? How did you learn to trust, and how did you grasp it? What are your insights on the trusting part?
Yeah. Well, again, there's a couple of things that spring to mind there. The first thing is that I had some wonderful training with MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, and I was trained by Annie and Michael Mithofer, who are incredible therapists and also incredible trainers, and they have a wealth of experience working with MDMA and people with post-traumatic stress disorder. So I think that was my first kind of building up of confidence in this ability to trust the process, because I was under that guidance of experienced therapists. And I think that is important, that I had that kind of wisdom shared with me. And I think not only from Michael and Annie, but those participants in research trials who generously allowed us to watch their videos of them experiencing the MDMA process, therapeutic process. And again, so I, before I actually was a therapist and sat in a room with someone, I got to see Michael and Annie and participants and the MDMA all working together. So I think that was a key component. And then I think what really also helped me was that I then had my own MDMA assisted therapy. And that was part of my training program. So I went to the States for that. And so then I got to experience that for myself, and that was hugely valuable, so and there were times when I at the beginning, when I first felt the effects of the MDMA, that it felt a little unusual, and I could feel my heart kind of racing a little, and I wasn't sure what was going to happen, and I had to breathe into it, and so I got to kind of experience trusting the process for myself, and that really helped me to bring an authenticity to my therapy then with our participants in the BEMA trial, the MDMA for alcoholism study I mentioned, because I had to trust in the process. I had witnessed others doing it as well. Kind of, I'd had the wisdom shared with me. I'd done it myself. I could say to them, breathe into it, trust in it, let go. And I knew it's going to be okay.
Wow, that's profound, isn't it? And how do you relay this to the people that are always continually challenging the concept of trusting? Because as also you mentioned earlier, it allows us to lose that control, or at least be more flexible, so that we can allow these experiences. So how do you deal with people that continue challenging, like, what is this trust? I don't understand, because this is seems to be the most common challenge.
Yeah, so like clients or participants, you mean, who might be saying I'm struggling? Yeah, I guess the key there is probably in preparation. Hopefully, again, I'm kind of covering another kind of key therapist skill here, is that ability to establish fairly quickly a strong therapeutic alliance. And I say very, very quickly, because typically we're working within research protocols with psychedelics. Here in the UK, we haven't got any legal use of psychedelics outside of research studies right now. So we usually have quite a tight schedule, right? And a protocol. So we usually have to kind of prepare and establish rapport with someone, perhaps in 2 to 3 sessions before they then have a psychedelic assisted session. So we want to really ensure that someone is prepared as possible to be able to trust, let go, and be open. So that is around them trusting you also, right? So because they might feel perhaps they know about, they've researched and you've told them about the safety of this compound that you're using. So you might have covered that. But if they don't feel kind of enough of a rapport with you, that's going to, of course, affect their mind, the setting ideas. So their mindset, and it kind of is going to make them feel quite tense and perhaps less able to let go in their compound assisted session. So I think the key is preparation there, and asking them, do they, what might make it difficult for them to trust and let go, and practice ways that they can make that a little easier. So if they're finding those difficult feelings are coming up and they want to reach out for a bit of support, you're going to discuss that and practice it beforehand, kind of cover all eventualities before. So yeah, preparation, I would say, is the key there.
Yeah, excellent. And how do you feel about the psychedelic renaissance, the concept that everything is happening too fast? Like, what do you think just happened? I don't believe this. It wasn't mainstream as much now than even 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. What do you think has happened suddenly?
Yeah. Ben and I talk about this a lot. Ben Sessa and I discuss this. And I mean, I can do a little plug for Ben now, because he has his book, The Psychedelic Renaissance. So,
yes, please.
Great read. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of this work isn't new at all. Obviously some of these compounds have been used, that there's indigenous uses of these compounds, and a lot of that experience we're using today, the concepts of setting and having guides and supporters. So that's really not new at all. And then, of course, we had the first kind of excitement in this area, and the first kind of emergence and research happening 50s and 60s. And then kind of the ban happened in the early 70s, and you can just see all the research then drops off, doesn't it? And then we have this pickup kind of early 2000s, and I just think about why now. I don't know whether it is to do with not only clients and patients being aware that what we have at the moment doesn't work for everybody, but it's kind of I think our patients and our clients have maybe been saying that to us for a while, but now us as kind of mental health professionals and health professionals in the field, therapists in the field, are kind of really understanding that a little more, and we kind of thinking to ourselves, maybe it is time. And yes, maybe we're talking paradigm shift. Maybe it's more subtle than that, and it's just going to be, this is another really useful tool in our kit here, that we can, because we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? So we can still use all the therapies that we've been using before. They still work for many people, and we can still use our skills there, but we can maybe say, for those for whom it doesn't seem to work, this is another option as well. And perhaps we're just embracing that a little more as health professionals, because it's timely. It's about time we look for something else to help more people. And I think as well, the more recent research that has been produced kind of in the last couple of decades, it's been really sound. We're doing randomized control trials, so it's getting kind of more difficult to dismiss this area of research, because we are producing good quality trials now. We need to do more for sure, but we're up there now with the best, and we've got good standards. So perhaps it's that. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure.
It feels like everything is just kind of aligning to this point. The research, people are being fed up of trying things and not working, and then the service providers, the health professionals, they're kind of tired of maybe repeating those same cycles, or repeatedly seeing the same patients again and again over the years and not getting anywhere. I guess it's all aligning together to the same point, isn't it?
I think so. And there's something about, more and more, the patients are being offered more choice, aren't they? So, so we're talking about now the UK kind of National Health Service, and there's kind of these right to choose options, and the ability to kind of choose what kind of to an extent, what kind of treatment you want, sort of where you would like it, and the options that you can be given. So it's not just, oh, you've got this difficulty and here's your treatment. That it's becoming a little bit broader than that, more generally, isn't it, that we have that as a patient we can choose. And so perhaps that's going to help as well, that you're going to have this option for other treatment approaches. And I think it's going to be probably particularly for those that have tried other things, they have tried everything else that we've got to throw at them, and everything else we've got to offer, and it's not worked. So let's try something a little different. Yeah,
that's so invaluable. And I love the concept of having this as another tool in the toolkit, because I did listen to Ben Sessa, so I'm going to cheat here a little bit, and I did hear him say we shouldn't just focus on psychedelics as this magic, it's going to cure everything. No, this will be another option to go into while using other tools that we've already known for years and decades, and test even the drugs, he said, and just seeing this as a designer drug, where it kind of goes directly to the root and helps and allows the patient to tap into the inner healing. But also you're right, there are many tools out there that also works for people. So many people probably never need to use psychedelics to heal or to help with their wellness and health. So I think this is so valuable to reinforce that, because what we are seeing and I'm observing also is that psychedelics as being the only thing now, and rest should go out, rest should be trashed.
I really think we should be cautious with that, giving that message. And I think you're absolutely right, Susan, that we should make room for everything, and see this as one option. And we don't. I would be reluctant to oversell this, because it is not a panacea. It's not a magic bullet. All those things. It doesn't work for absolutely everybody. It is just a wonderful tool to add for us as therapists and practitioners. What an amazing choice to have to go to if your client it seems to be struggling. But I think, we need to be cautious with that message about this is the only way. I wouldn't support that. I would say it's another way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like we're going to need a lot of people stepping up, a lot of people like level-headed who are just doing their work behind the scenes, just really, doing the grind, but really with maturity and responsibility, with mature approach, and then talk about it and then offer it. And what are your thoughts on, in the UK, it's very different than the US. Obviously, US is leading. I don't know if you see the same way that, I see that it feels like US has been leading this whole psychedelic renaissance so far. And how is it done in the UK? What's different with us over here? Because I'm in the UK as well myself. What is it different?
Yeah, I think I think the UK has really stepped up, certainly in the last decade or so. We were probably a little behind because I'm thinking MAPS, being the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, led by Rick Doblin. I think he's been going for several decades, and I mean, where would we be without Rick and MAPS? I think for them, plugging away has really helped the international effort. And even in the wilderness years, as I would call it, sort of 1970s up to the early 2000s, we're just really working hard to get the research trials done. And then, more recently, there's certainly Imperial College London, who I'm involved with, and a few other universities in the UK. We have managed to put, we've had David Nutt, Professor David Nutt, who has really pushed forward the effort, not only in the UK, but internationally. And we've got Robin Carhart Harris as a UK academic who has had a huge impact. So I think that's helped our cause. And I think, establishing a psychedelic kind of research centre based in Imperial College London was a huge step. Now, having that as its own department within a university, led by Robin at the time, that again made a difference. And I think it's almost like you were saying just now, Susan. It's us being almost making sure we're kind of quite boring and just plodding away to get the research done. Is what we hope what's going to make a difference, because hopefully if NHS commissioners, hopefully if governments are saying, are we going to adopt this as a treatment, they're going to look at the evidence base. I hope that's what they'll do, and I hope what they'll do is be impressed by it, and for them to be impressed by it, we just need to do, like you said, the hard graft. But I think in the UK we've kind of stepped that up. So I'm going to be optimistic, I'm going to be
Yes.
optimistic that
Mhm.
we will see this adopted as a treatment.
Yes, because I do feel the conviction in when Dr. Ben Sesser, Dr. Robin, Professor David Nadd, I also follow his work, uh, all these guys in the UK. You really see that conviction in their cause, but in a very mature approach, which I love. I think in the UK we have a very different culture, to different approach to new things, right? We don't maybe, go out and scream and shout from the rooftops, but I love the way that everyone is just kind of putting their heads down and just working and putting the work in, because at the end of the day the research, the outcomes, the results is going to matter, right? And that's so important.
Exactly. And I think it probably makes a difference. I think our health service setups will make a difference, between the American system, the paid for system, and our free for all national health system. So I think, what we're working with very different treatment systems, and that might make a little difference to us, because I will just speak for myself now, because I can't speak for David or Ben, but I just want to see psychedelic assisted psychotherapy not only approved as a treatment, but approved as a treatment that everybody can access free on the National Health Service. So maybe that is kind of another layer to add to it as well, that we want to try and get this accessible. So yeah, not only have this as a tool in our toolkit, but have it as one that we can provide free at the point of delivery.
Wow, that's a real mission right there, because I hear a lot of the professionals talk about people who really need this. They don't even know that it exists. And people who, and we are aware of the subculture, the psychedelic culture, people who go really out and screaming and using these medicines recreationally and all kinds of things, but then the real people who really maybe need it, they don't even know about it. So I see your point that it should be available to everybody free.
Exactly. And I think that's at Awaken, so we're working, myself and Ben and David were working as part of Awaken Life Sciences, and to establish these medicines in clinical treatment paradigms, not just research protocols. And I see that as part of our Awaken mission, is to work with governments and NHS trusts to see how we can make this accessible, like you said, to people who really need it, who might not even know about it. I see that as part of our responsibility.
Yes, 100%. And how can we help you guys support? How can we support you guys in doing this mission, bringing it to those people? And yeah, how can we do this as collective in the UK?
Yeah, I think it, again, it's improving. It's things like this, Susan, it's raising awareness, getting the message out there, making it as mainstream as possible, that we, that this research is talked about, at least. And I think, again, there's been huge steps forward in that regard in the last few years or so. But I think it's making sure that people could pick up a newspaper, if people still pick up newspapers now, or Google's on the internet, like treatments for anxiety or depression or whatever it is, and somehow see that this is an option, or that there are at least research trials investigating it. And I guess we do that just by keep talking about it as much as we can, just keeping the conversation going. And yeah, keeping up that passion to work with people who really need this. We're definitely passionate. Myself, Ben, David, the Awaken team, really kind of passionate about working with people with addictions, and with people which encompasses a huge amount of people, as we discussed earlier, people with kind of trauma-based difficulties. To be able to access these therapies, those who have become perhaps quite stuck, they've tried lots of things that haven't worked. We really want to try and get those people access to the support that might actually help them to recover.
Yeah, amazing. One of the one of the questions I always wanted to ask a leading professional in front lines is that, so do you find or do you observe that there is a stigma? The stigma taints what it could be done, like established when a research study is put out there. There may still be generations around who see MDMA as party drug or recreational drug that carry negativity and stigma, and they cannot even comprehend this could be used to treat such, difficult issues, health difficulties. Do you see that, or are they coming along now?
So I think it's got better, but I think it is still there, and it probably might not go away completely, because I think there are there's a whole spectrum on there of people with different views on drugs, and there will be some people out there who are just not going to support the idea of perhaps taking any drugs at all. Perhaps those people wouldn't take an antidepressant either, and that's fair enough. That's okay. I'd like us to be able to do a bit more, perhaps with that middle group who think that they would take kind of a paracetamol, or they would take I think an antidepressant is probably a better example. But they would absolutely write off something like MDMA or psilocybin. I think we can do a bit of work with those people to kind of explain how the safety profiles of these compounds, and also the idea behind psychedelic assisted psychotherapy is kind of minimal use of medication. Typically in protocols you take the compound 3 or 4 times. If you think about taking an SSRI, an antidepressant, it's often as a maintenance drug, isn't it, that you take every day for goodness knows how many years, maybe 5, 10. So I think we could, we want to try and perhaps not necessarily convince those people, but allow those people access to be able to kind of educate themselves. And again, how would we do that? I guess, is it by making sure that our research is getting out there? I think we do, even before we manage to conduct research trials and publish them, I think there is probably a little bit of stigma of getting these trials set up. Sometimes, we do find it quite difficult to establish them. And I think that stigma being that, they are still prohibited substances. The scheduling kind of makes it difficult. So I think that stigma is still affecting our research now. And that's kind of a slightly, well, I guess it is related, because that informs public opinion, doesn't it? Because kind of the government has essentially said that they're dangerous with no therapeutic use. So yeah, I think despite all those difficulties in setting up this research, we have to just be persistent. We have to, like you were saying, be kind of toe the line, just do everything right, do our randomized controlled trials to the best of our ability, and then publish them and help to make sure that those results are disseminated far and wide, and it's not just the niche people who are already interested who are seeing it. And I feel optimistic that we're getting better at that.
Amazing. And in doing so while trusting the process, that it will be okay. I love this. Thank you so much. I'm very, very aware of your time, and I don't want to keep you too long. Just lastly, what are those projects coming up for the Awaken Life Sciences that you would like the public to know about? And what are you guys working on right now, silently, in the background?
Yeah, so we've got so much going on, Susan. It's super busy at Awaken, which is just fantastic. We are working with Professor Celia Morgan from Exeter University, who has a wealth of experience. One of the leading UK researchers in ketamine using ketamine to support people with mental health problems, particularly addictions. And she's just published a research study using ketamine to support people with alcoholism, and will be shortly doing a study using ketamine to support people with gambling problems. So, wow. And that's something that we'll be doing in collaboration. So Awaken and Professor Morgan collaborating on that research, which is again really exciting area of research. So we're planning to do more research with ketamine and more research with MDMA. So I mentioned earlier in the interview about our Bristol Imperial MDMA for alcoholism study, and that was that was a pilot study, and that was just looking about whether we could give people with alcohol use disorder MDMA in a safe way and whether they could tolerate it, and happily that was a really successful study, and even though it was a small sample, the early indications were that it seemed to be effective for helping people to stay sober. So it was a relapse prevention study, and it seemed to help people to remain abstinent. So we're going to follow that up, with a phase 2B study, and do a bigger trial and compare it to placebo. So that's coming up from Awaken as well. So
fantastic. Can the listeners find everything on the website?
I think you can look us up at awakenlifesciences.com, and also follow Awaken on social media pages, have Instagram and Facebook as well, where we put out what we're up to and what we're doing. So,
fantastic. That's amazing. So we will be sharing all of the links in the show notes as well, to let people connect and follow you guys and follow the work. And thank you so much. Do you have any personal, social, or any pages that we can maybe follow your journey in this bigger picture?
You can find me on Twitter. I think now I'm on the spot. I think I'm Laurie, very catchy Laurie Olivia too, on Twitter. That's my main account. Is I use Twitter.
Excellent, fantastic. Because we do want to follow your participation and contribution in this big project. Amazing. Thank you so much again for dropping all your wisdom and your projects and the things that you guys are busy doing, and also contributing for the greater good. Appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan, so much.
Great. And this is the end of our conversation, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Please do get in touch with Dr. Laurie Higbed or the Awaken Life Sciences. You can check them out, subscribe, and follow the process. And thank you again for tuning in. I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye for now. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Psychedelic Conversations podcast is designed to educate, inform, and expand awareness. For more information, please head over to psychedelicconversations.com. You can also share with your friends or leave a review so that we can reach more people. You can also join us in our private Facebook group to keep the conversation going. This show is for information purposes only, and it is not intended to provide mental health or medical advice. Thanks for listening.